Kind of hotel and then like the college station like that.
So this is definitely here less than, but I have 3 or 2. I have 3. So I can. Yeah. Yeah.
For the University of California. Yeah, I think I don't understand.
Okay, members, the Senate Education Committee K through 16 will come to order. We'll hold on call and roll at this time as members are in different committees still coming our direction. There are obviously several other hearings going on this morning, members, and we know that we'll have members of the committee coming in and out. The Senate floor will convene at 11. So around 10:45, the committee will recess so that we can head to the floor, and then we will come back upon adjournment. We'll make those announcements on the Senate floor as we're working on our business there. For our public witnesses, each public witness will have 2 minutes to provide his or her testimony today. Anyone wishing to testify, submit written testimony, either way, please register at the kiosk in the corridor if you haven't already, and we will have open public registration for testimony on HB2 until 1 p.m. today, so there'll be plenty of time to get your registration in. Anyone interested in submitting written testimony, please submit 13 copies to our staff up front that'll be willing to help you, and our members will receive those copies, and we very much appreciate that written testimony, and we take it very seriously. Members will begin on our committee business, and we will, Madam Vice Chair, I will ask you to recognize me on House Bill 2.
The chair lays out House Bill 2 by Representative Buckley, sponsored by Senator Creighton. Senator Creighton, do you have a committee substitute?
Yes, we do.
Senator Hinojosa sends up committee substitute for House Bill 2 and recognizes Senator Creighton to explain the difference between the substitute and the original filed measure. Senator Creighton.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair and members. As copies of the substitute is being handed out, I'll go through some of the larger components, structural components of House Bill 2. House Bill 2 delivers $8 billion in new funding for Texas public education. It's very exciting and historic dollars for our public schools. More than House Bill 3 from 2019, more than any public education package that we've ever passed. Every single district, from Beaumont to El Paso, from Wichita Falls to McAllen, benefits. The committee substitute is comprised of strategic investments with measurable outcomes. Because we're investing $8 billion of new funding across the bienniums, the trend of new dollars for public schools, the trend or the average is normally $2 billion of new money. Because we're at a 4X factor on the infusion of new dollars, we must deploy every dollar to ensure maximum impact. There's been a lot of discussion today about the basic allotment and how that has been added to in the bill. The basic allotment, the equivalent of $55 added to the basic allotment, the math on that is $800 million of new money. That means if $55 added to the basic allotment is $800 million, that means there is $7.2 billion other dollars. $7.2 billion additional dollars beyond the new dollars added to the basic allotment. That's a very important point that seems to be lost in narratives right now as we talk about this historic money, knowing that every district wins in Texas. 1,200 school districts win under the bill. We're still going through the text. I'll walk through each article of the bill, but I want to explain some of the provisions central to the investment in public education. At the heart of the plan is the permanent teacher compensation allotment. Many of us and many of you that are often with us in the Public Education Committee have talked about in the past when we are able, with a surplus or available revenue, when we've been able to pay our teachers more, and that might be twice a decade, but it's often called a stipend or a bonus for a reason, because we are subject to a 2-year budget, and the revenues coming into the state, because of our Constitution, we have to weigh our expenditures against those revenues and balance our budget. So now we have a surplus, and what's different about this bill is the teacher pay increases for the first time in Texas history live beyond this House Bill 2, and they're permanent. The cup is filled every 2 years, every biennium, for the first time in history, and that represents billions of dollars in impact to our districts and commitment as a budget culture from the legislature from here forward that if that cup is tinkered with, it's going to be very obvious to all of our teachers out there that there's some manipulation with that allotment. They've never had that kind of cover before, that kind of security before, and we are working hard to deliver that. If we just increase the basic allotment by itself, that would not happen for our teachers. That permanence, it wouldn't happen. And so we are very committed to our teachers to make sure that that is the case. So you might ask for the paraprofessionals and the custodians and the librarians and the bus drivers and the LPCs and all of those other individuals with the district, because we are shifting burden of billions and billions of dollars of burden off of the basic allotment and creating a new permanent teacher allotment. That basic allotment is now freed up to cover those individuals in ways that it has not been before, because in the past we have had restrictions on new dollars going into the basic allotment where a certain percentage of those new dollars have to go to teachers. Now, that's not the case. Those new dollars into the BA can go to all of those other personnel because our teachers have a dedicated, brand new, and permanent allotment in the bill. We're expanding the teacher incentive allotment, but the teacher incentive allotment, as important as it is not the largest percentage of infusion of new dollars for teacher pay. In fact, we have over 80% of the new dollars for teacher compensation is for our teachers from year 3 onward, in that across the board fashion for teacher pay raises. And the basic allotment TIA component, or the new money for the teacher incentive allotment, is a much smaller fraction of the total dollars that we're committing to our teachers. From literacy and math interventions, which we've talked about in this committee, we have to make those investments in those supports to make sure that in K, 1, 2, and 3, and early literacy and for numeracy, that we have those supports and not just mandates, but the funding behind it, so that our districts can accomplish what they need on behalf of our youngest students in those foundational years. For teacher certification and prep, we have to have not just mandates, but incredible dollars to make sure that our new teachers coming in have a path to get certified, and some of those startup costs as they change their profession and they come into our public schools with a passion to teach and living out a dream that they've probably had for many, many years in another line of work, that we're providing generational support for them to be able to realize that dream so that we can realize their talent as a state and for our future workforce and for our kids. Those two incredible supports for early literacy and numeracy and teacher prep and certification are fundamental to the new dollars in the bill and making sure that we have those supports there for our students and for our teachers. These are guaranteed raises that begin in the third year of teaching. The reason why it begins in the third year is because our first year teachers have just negotiated their starting salaries, and we're 14th in the nation in starting salary ranking. But we are a low ranking in the nation for our experienced teachers in compensation, and we're losing them. And teacher safety, which we're addressing in this session, student discipline, which ties directly to teacher safety, that we're addressing this session, and compensation are the top of the list as our teachers are surveyed all over the state. 80% of the dollars in the bill go directly to raises for teachers in the classroom. So again, that's permanent. Around 20% goes to the TIA teacher incentive allotment. That shows our priority set as legislators, where TIA and those teacher incentive allotment dollars are very important. They only represent 20% of our commitment to pay our teachers more, because all of our teachers need more dollars. And a path to get to those bigger dollars, we've also created separate from this bill so that all of our teachers can realize those $5,000 bonus incentives and greater on to making what we all hope will be 6 figures in the very near future years, which we're seeing the number of teacher incentive allotment teachers doubling quickly year after year after year. It's very exciting. But all of our teachers deserve a lift and support and respect and dignity and earnings that help them make life make sense so that our littles in the classroom can have their support without stress. As this committee's already discussed, 56% of all new teachers in the classroom last year entered uncertified. So we have to address that. And some of that is just the stress of the cost of gaining that certification. So again, we're providing pathways and supports through dollars so that they can get there. Again, everything I'm talking about is not just contained in the basic allotment plus $55. That represents in new money $800 million in the bill. Separate from the basic allotment plus $55, separate from that $800 million is another $7.2 billion that's not been mentioned over the past few days. We've increased transparency in the bill by allowing for parental notification if a teacher's not certified. Our parents would like to know that, especially in our early years of foundational instruction. That's very important. Many of our districts already do that, but we're making sure that it's in state law so all of our districts follow that best practice for our moms and dads out there. The pathways we're providing for teachers, traditional university programs, a year-long residency program, improved alternative certification programs with pre-service training and supports, and a Grow Your Own initiative that we've had in the past that provides our future teachers support from in the district and our local communities. These are all efforts to make sure our uncertified teachers are not just out there on their own, but that they have the supports and a plan and dollars to realize their dream and get where they want to be. Teacher rights are in the bill. Teacher rights are very important to us as legislators, and in different vehicles this session, we've passed bills lifting up our teachers and making sure their rights are known and protected, because again, by survey, they feel like those rights have been infringed upon and that they've been diminished in their importance, and they feel like they need stronger supports. We're giving that to them. For instance, a teacher that has a pre-K program in their current school, it wasn't part of their compensation package to cover their own children to be able to participate in that pre-K program in the school that they're teaching in. Now we're doing so. We're making sure that they don't have to come out of pocket for their own kids to be in a pre-K program in the school that they teach in. For special education funding, when the bill left the Senate, it was around $700 million. Through our negotiations with conferees in the House, our special education funding is now $1.3 billion. So you see that reference alone. If the basic allotment plus $55 and the equivalent of $800 million was all we were talking about, the special education money separate from that couldn't be $1.3 billion. That's an example of where the rest of the money lies. Permanent teacher pay, billions of dollars. Special education money, $1.3 billion, instead of where we were at nearly half of that. So these are big items that our districts are asking us to deliver on. It's not that we're framing issues that don't currently exist for them and forcing them to follow strategies that they don't have needs within. That is sometimes the narrative as well. And I'll finish up and we'll have some dialogue. The bill in addressing new evaluations that are requested from the district, if a mom or dad wants to know if their child has a special need in education, those evaluations are expensive. The bill provides $1,000 for each evaluation that's requested, and that is also new dollars that we've been working very diligently on. And some may ask, what's taken so much time, right? I mean, we've had a couple of weeks on this. This is the most complex funding bill out of 10,000 bills in the session. And we need to get this right. I love our friends in Washington, but this bill might take a year and a half to negotiate in Washington, D.C. We have been working along with all of the other bills that we're responsible for on a shot clock to make sure that we're on the floor or in committee. We've been working with our colleagues in the House as fast as we can. The fiscal note on this bill arrived at 5 p.m. yesterday. So I know for those out there that wanted us to get into a hearing, we've all been eager and excited to talk about the aspects of this historic bill for our public schools. So eager, we just wanted to get in here even without posting and just put it on Facebook to come one and come all and join us. But we couldn't do that because we have to respect our colleagues in the House. It's a process. And some of the, again, like the special education negotiations, we had to get everything we could out of it, but make sure that the total number fit at the end of the day. We have career and technology, training, investment. We, again, have the early literacy and numeracy provisions for reading and math is $700 million alone beyond the basic allotment plus $55. So all of these big tranches and these big supports are some of the things I'm covering. We work to keep our commitment to school safety. It's $500 million. We're continuing on that track. Some of our school districts have made major accomplishments in that area. So we're talking and continuing to talk about this bill on flexibility with those dollars and making sure that if our districts feel very strong, their assets are hardened and they feel very fortified and very strong and confident about their safety provisions, we're working on exactly what that means on the use of those safety dollars. Members, after months of work and collaboration, we're very proud to present this bill. Yes, we've got some structural differences from what the House put together, but I think a lot of the concern was mainly the architecture. And in the past, it has been just what are we adding to the basic allotment? And we've got some different architecture here, so it takes a little bit to get adjusted to it, to see it for what it is and to understand that all districts are winning. And our districts up until this hearing have not had the fiscal impact or the consequences to their own district to even know how they're affected, that they are winning in an amazing way under this legislation. So I personally, as chairman, understand the apprehension out there, and we get it. We just have been moving so fast that it's been hard to get that information out because we've barely gotten our hands on the good news as well. We'll stop there. That's plenty of time to lay out the bigger aspects and commitments within the bill. And Senator Menendez, I know, will begin with, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I'm used to calling on witnesses.
Absolutely.
Madam Chair, thank you for the time to allow me that layout, and I know the members have questions. Yeah.
Chairman, I think that was a very good layout,
Yeah.
clear. We need everybody to hear it the same.
Yeah.
And so I think this is good.
Yeah.
It is still a work in progress that
Yes.
you've been working on. Very pleased with how you've included so many people
Yeah.
in this bill as it's moving along and explaining. So with that, members' questions. Senator Menendez, you had your light on.
Thank you,
Then
Madam
Senator
Chair.
King has his light, and then Senator West.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Creighton, first and foremost, let me thank you for the hard work you've put into this. It's been a huge task. And normally, the Texas legislature is not known for looking at how we finance our schools unless there's been a lawsuit. That's been the history. School finance has been something that's been highly legislated because it is so important to every one of our districts. It's the most important thing that we do. It's really where people talk about the budget being a moral document, and this is the part that's most important. Just for the bill that we received this morning, the 225-page bill, just to make sure we understand, I want to make sure I recall that the committee sub added Senate Bill 26. I want to go down a list of the bills and make sure that I've got it correct.
That's right.
So I'm going to ask you, Senate 20, your teacher compensation, that's one of the bills that's in the committee sub?
That's right.
Okay.
Can I interrupt you just a
Sure, go
minute?
ahead.
Hold that thought. I'd like the clerk to call the roll while we have
Yeah.
so many here.
Creighton,
Here.
Campbell,
Here.
Hagenbu, Hinojosa, King,
Here.
Menendez,
Present.
Parker,
Here.
West.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Do you
Thank you for
want to
indulging.
adopt the committee sub?
Did we have enough here to adopt that? Yes, we'll go ahead and adopt the committee sub. Senator Hinojosa sends up the committee substitute, Senate Bill 2. Any objections? Hearing none. So ordered. Thank you, Senator Menendez.
Absolutely, Madam Chair. I'm here to help. Senate Bill 2253, the teacher's prep bill, is that part of the committee sub?
That's correct. Yes, you're right. The teacher compensation bill, Senate Bill 26, and the teacher prep and certification reforms, all inclusive, Senate Bill 2253 are included.
Earlier, you said that one of the things you wanted to make sure is that if there was an uncertified teacher in the classroom, that the school districts would inform the parents. Does that apply to charter schools as well as regular ISDs?
It's just a public school requirement at this point.
But aren't charter schools public schools?
Well, it separates charter schools from that policy. I know you and I have talked about aligning as many of these requirements as possible, and I believe that in other bills there are those suggested policies, and still have more of the session to go. But in this HB2, we have it depicted as that.
But this bill also increases the basic allotment, the weight for them to have facilities funding, does it not, for the charter schools?
That's correct. Yes, since 2019, you know, we have been working through our surpluses to find every way we possibly can to lift up our public schools with new dollars. We have a slight weight change for charters also.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just going to go down the list of the bills just so that everybody listening at home and watching here in the audience can understand what's in the committee sub.
Right.
And then I'll get back to the fact that, with all due respect, sometimes it feels like we call charter schools public schools when it's convenient, when we're helping, but we exclude them from the public school requirements, and that I don't understand that yet. Senate Bill 27, it's the Bill of Rights. I think you already said that one's in there, right? The Teacher Bill of Rights?
That's correct.
And
the
then
Teacher Bill of Rights is included in HB2.
correct. And so in HB2, we've included the Early Learning Bill, SB 2252, is that correct? Your SB 2252 Early Learning, that's included as well, right?
That's correct.
And then SB 1826, the CTE reform, that's in there as well, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And then SB 568, correct?
That is also correct.
Okay. So I believe that you have a lot of good reforms in the bill. I think the concern that I've been hearing, and I've mentioned this to you, there are a couple of things. One is I just want to make sure, because the state of Texas has, had and lost lawsuits because the state constitution requires that we provide an equitable education for all students, regardless of the zip code that they're born into.
That's right.
And many of us, we represent very large districts, over 1 million people. And I mean, I'm sure you'd agree with me, it doesn't make any sense from a policy perspective or a moral perspective that we provide better funding to people who live in more affluent school districts than we would a poor school district. Would you agree?
We've worked on 45 years of school finance litigation to try to bring fairness to the formulas. Of course, the current litigation and rulings, the holdings from the court, are that our system is equitable.
I've heard, and I just want to make sure that as
we could always improve it.
I definitely appreciate that and agree with that, because I think sometimes you said in your bill that this also releases what we call a golden penny.
That's correct.
And that golden penny, does it work the same in all school districts, or does it bring in more money for property-rich school districts than it does property-poor? I don't know for a fact. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah. So when we're talking about the golden penny, and we discussed this some yesterday in meetings leading up to the bill, the impact of unlocking the golden penny is much of the increase to the basic allotment. But obviously, in our formulas, we have weights and lifts for districts that have less property value.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
Districts that aren't as affluent.
Right.
And those adjustments, of course, as legislators and appropriators, we're always talking about how can we make the formulas more fair, and how can we make the formulas less complex,
Right.
so that our members, as we're working on this, and our stakeholders, and all of those weighing in district to district, that they won't see two districts down the street from one another, essentially, that have different impacts on how students, dollar for dollar, are provided funding. And I'm with you on that. I think that, as we continue through the interim and a wholesale review of just how we always strive for more fairness,
Yeah.
I'm committed to continuing to work on that with you. But the yield for all districts on the golden penny is, through our formulas, it's guaranteed to be an equitable yield, a similar yield, based on how those weights are positioned. Now, we talk recapture, and we talk about Robin Hood.
Right, right.
We talk about all these different ways that we fund our public schools through, the impact of rising appraisals across the state,
Right.
how we repurpose those dollars.
Yep.
It's been half a century of discussion, Senator Menendez, and you've been a leader on that, always trying to make these formulas more fair.
I appreciate that, but couple questions, and I don't mean to take up so much. It's a huge bill. The bill has $250 million, I believe, for facilities funding for charter schools. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And on that $250 million, y'all arrived at that by adjusting the weight on the allotment. I think you increased the weight, right?
That's correct. There was a slight adjustment in the weight.
That means
That's a level up from where they sat at 2019 until now. So we, out of the $8 billion of funding in this legislation, you mentioned $255 million that will be a weighted adjustment for our charters. Yeah.
we just had 29 schools closed in Bexar County, and unfortunately, these are facilities due to lack of kids. And Commissioner Morath just approved 2 new charter schools in Bexar County. And I guess the question is, it seems, if we're going to have people building these new buildings, what guarantees or assurances do we have to Texas taxpayers that these buildings are going to be owned by taxpayers and not owned by out-of-state corporations like we've had in the past, where some tax dollars, in I think the Houston area, there was a charter school that was sending its money to Colorado?
Yeah, we don't have any change in HB2 on the current policies on that. I know you and I and many members have had discussions on how it works with those assets as we compare, public school assets to the charter schools and where they're located. Mm-hmm. We're providing money to those educational facilities under a watchful eye, and it could be more watchful, right? And we're working towards that. We don't cover that in this funding bill for our schools.
You put $42 million for the school districts that are affected by the windstorm insurance by TWIA, correct?
That's right.
I have an idea, because all of our school districts' property insurance costs have gone up, and I have an idea that we just do a property insurance study to help reduce costs for all of our school districts. It's a Senate bill that maybe we could talk about that might possibly fit on this bill. If it's because it's a study, it wouldn't add a cost, but my concern is that a lot of the inflation, price of diesel, price of all of the products that these kids have, the school districts have to run their schools, has been affected. And I'm concerned that the $55 that we're adding, and maybe when we see the runs that we say, it's not just 55, I think I heard you say, it's the money that's also been freed up where they used to pay for something that we're giving them money to pay out of the allotment you've created.
That's right. There's more freedom and flexibility, in complete freedom and flexibility in the new Senate and House negotiated bill for the use of the basic allotment, where previously it had guardrails telling districts how to use that money. So we're shifting billions of dollars permanently off of the basic allotment pressures, and then the remaining basic allotment plus more money districts can use fully flexible.
Is there a policy reason why we are asking school districts to have certified teachers, but we're not asking the ISDs, but not the charter schools?
Yeah, I know that you have many concerns about alignment on that, and we really, I think, in joining together, we need to compare a lot of the requirements on charters and on publics, Senator Menendez. But for instance, charter schools, if they fail 3 years in a row, they close. Public schools, if they fail 3 years in a row, they do not close. So when we're talking about parity provisions, we have to make that a two-way street and just decide, do we apply all requirements on charters to public, to traditional public schools, and all requirements on traditional public schools to charters. But I think, as you referenced insurance costs, we need a wholesale review of impact and alignment. And what is fair for one is fair for the other.
Agreed.
Some of these have differences in how those particular laws or requirements would have impact, because they're just different in some nature. But we need to understand it before we put it into a major funding.
My last question for you, Mr. Chairman, because I know how hard you've worked on this, and it's a huge lift, and you're negotiating with the House and with lots of leaders in the industry statewide. From an efficiency standpoint, from us being the stewards of our taxpayer dollars, and that being one of our number one priorities, being good fiduciaries of the taxpayer dollar. One of my concerns that I hope y'all can address in these new dollars that are going to be placed or given to the charter schools, as they look to expand, one of the areas of frustration that we're having in communities is there's a perfectly good public education, public elementary school, middle school, whatever, and then all of a sudden a charter school gets built across the street. That would almost be akin to building an airport across the street from another airport, and they're both having the same purpose, because we're paying them out of the same pot and they're serving the same community. So it just seems very inefficient for us to use our limited tax dollars to allow folks to build within walking distance, crossing the street of each other, two schools that do the same function.
I completely understand your point. It's well taken. Those are part of the things that we need to continue to work through the committee with very good advice and expertise from our stakeholders. We have districts that have met with all of us that have said, hey, if we have an A or B rated school, why would we have a charter school next door, right? Yeah. And then we have districts that have been struggling. Let's say they've been at a D or an F, but that they quickly rise to a B.
Right.
And within our accountability system and within the changes and the improvements that all of our teachers are working so hard to deliver, we need something that makes sense, because the second that we create some sort of a framework like that, they could change their status, and we don't know who's next door to who.
And here,
I do.
And I guess you sparked. I'm sorry that I said the last question, but the charter schools also advertise for kids. In our traditional public schools don't tend to put billboards up and commercials and stuff and all these things where they make it attractive to you. So they're recruiting. And if there were maybe a penalty for saying, okay, if you take the kid and then right after the test is done and they are not prepared or they didn't do well on the test, you send them back to public school, or now the kid goes back to public school and they're behind. There should be some sort of kind of like, wait a minute, you can't just be sort of creaming and then sending the public school back what you weren't able to help. I wish we could figure something out, because I don't care if it's public, charter, but if they all are treated the same and they all treat our children the same. Because right now it feels almost like they're treating our children like they're just looking at the ADA. the money that it goes into, and we've had a history of people using our kids for financial as almost as they were a commodity that allows them to gain more money.
Well, there's a lot of promotion of our traditional public schools in the community as well, right? I mean, they all are promoted in different ways, and I was at a high-performing, impressive charter in Senator Roy's Central West District recently, Uplift, that just has some incredible promise, progress, and outcomes. And just like traditional public schools, we see some that are doing very, very well, and we see others that are not up to the standards that we would want as legislators and as a community to see on performance, which again is why if there are 3 Fs in a row for those charters, they close. We don't have that requirement on traditional public schools. So let's continue to talk about that. Yep. We've done the best in this legislation to provide, 99% of the funding or more for our traditional public schools and the kind of just real impact that they need. But point well taken that we have some work to do for what we expect from our charters and the alignment of requirements and parity.
We just need to have fairness in the system.
That's right. I hope I'm restating that.
Absolutely, yeah. You are, and fairness in the system, and not let people find ways to game the system, and then take advantage of people. Us, we never believe that people are going to use our taxpayer dollars for their own just personal gain, but we have experience that that's happened.
Well, the members don't want to hear this, but as we land the plane quickly and finish out the session, we're going to start quickly as a committee working on our interim charges in a very substantive way. And I know after we have a little bit of time to exhale, that will be part of the conversation quickly.
Just, you've never heard of a traditional public school with a suite at the Spurs game or a private jet, and, unfortunately that's happened and with our charter schools. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well taken, Senator Menendez. Appreciate
Thank you, Senator. We'll go to Senator West in just a minute, but a couple of house cleaning announcements.
Yes.
When we get a chance, actually, right before 11, we're going to have to break and go to the floor, so we need to think about wrapping up comments, and if you're testifying at that time, be thinking about that we are going to wrap up. I will tell you that we have 2 invited witnesses, and they'll be given about 4 minutes each to testify. When we open for public testimony, we have about 60 witnesses registered so far. And by the way, registration, if you wish to testify on, for, or against the bill, that closes at 1 p.m. This afternoon, strictly closes. We will reassemble, of course, after we recess on the floor. That could be 3 o'clock, it could be 6 o'clock. We don't know what all is going to occur there. For now, we do have an overflow room in E1016. E1016. When you do get up to testify later today, if you're not an invited witness, if you've registered, you'll have 2 minutes to testify. We'll call people up in groups of 4, and because of the numbers, we will strictly enforce that 2-minute restriction, and so we can try to hear from everybody because we want to hear from everybody. So with that, Senator West, I understand you had some questions.
Yeah, and I'm not going to be long because we want to hear from everyone. This is a lot to digest. Senator Creighton, as I've said in the past, this is a Herculean task by you as the chair. A discussion much needed in terms of public education. When I say public education, I'm talking about public education, both traditional and also charters.
Yes.
Some of the things that were asked by Senator Menendez, I won't go over, but I have some of the same concerns. But I want to focus in on funding and the policy behind what the funding is about. In terms of the golden pennies, there have been those who said that this is not new money. This is a reallocation of monies. Can you speak to that?
Yes. So when we refer to unlocking the golden penny, and that being an increase to the basic allotment, that was in our base budget this session as new dollars, the equivalent of $800 million in the base bill. It is new dollars. It is considered spending, and it makes use of the equivalent of that golden penny that otherwise You know, for instance, a district would not have to go out for an election to be able to use that money.
It's my understanding, though, that we, 800, excuse me, 800 million went in, but we also cut the yield also. But it ended up being zero. Are you familiar with that?
We've cut the yield for the equivalent on the dollars.
Right. I think we need to look at that.
Yeah.
Because even though we put the 800 million in, the yield was cut also. So we need to visit about that. We can visit about that.
So it's definitely considered new spending in our budget.
I understand that's what it's
Yeah.
considered. But the question is
So
whether or
the
not
no-
it is new spending or not, though.
Yeah, how we define that spending, I mean, it's kind of like.
Well, the legislature, we can define anything.
It's exactly. It's kind of like when we use our surplus dollars and we return it to the taxpayer, that's still considered spending.
All right, I understand. We're the legislature. We can define anything we want, the way we want to.
We try to actually make it not the death of common sense, though, but absent
I
certain
agree with
opinions.
you wholeheartedly,
Yeah.
but I mean,
Yeah.
we need to make certain, though, that if we're defining something some way, it is actually what it is.
And
That's all I'm saying.
and I assure you, the 7.2 billion separate.
I'm not talking about 7.2 billion.
Well,
I'm
we've
talking
got
about
to have a
800
conversation here, not a sermon. I've got to be able to talk too. So
Gentlemen.
the 7.2 billion additional dollars is also new money into public schools. So
Well, I was just talking about the golden penny
yes,
right now, though.
oh yeah, I'm talking about both.
Let's get into a little bit more.
All right.
Well, again, we really want to hear from I guess during the testimony, we'll hear from people, and during that phase, I'll have some questions, because again, treating charters differently from public schools. Treating charters differently from public schools. If schools are under a certain limit, a certain population, we're giving the teachers additional monies and pay raises. That applies to charter schools also, correct?
That's right.
So if you have in an urban area charter schools that are under the population limit, they may very well, those teachers, uncertified, in many instances, the bulk are uncertified, they end up getting a $10,000 raise. But that urban school teacher who's in a school that may have a higher population would not get that same raise, correct?
If
They'd get half of that.
If they're at an experience level of a certain number of years, yes, that could be the case. You know, you and I have talked quite a bit about how we set these parameters for what districts, take the most for increased parity and the level up. Because, it's the committee, I think, as a whole, very much agrees that we've got many smaller districts that are still earning in the 30s. Yet, as politicians, we're hanging notes on everybody's door to reelect us saying we're paying starting salaries for teachers in the upper 50s and lower 60s, which is just not true. So we're doing our best to have a level up for districts that traditionally have been chasing these larger urban districts that have so much tax base and the ability to scale and pay more. Many of these smaller districts have just not been able to do that, yet they're rising property taxes and rising insurance costs and just trying to make life make sense and pay bills. Those teachers making in the 30s while we've left them behind. This bill increases and levels up fairness in what they're being paid so that there's more of an average median that we can count on.
I think you kind of missed my point on this one. I agree with you wholeheartedly, and frankly, I think we've done a great job in terms of the various tiers that you've put in terms of teachers.
To your point, the tier is not perfect.
No, I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, and hopefully you think about this, if we are differentiating charter school requirements specifically with teachers, than quote unquote traditional public schools, we need to think about it. Because if you have a charter school, which I have numerous charter schools, that it's under 5,000, then they are able to get the teachers that stay an extended period of time, at least 3 years, are able to get $10,000 5 years experience, where in the public school sphere, a certified teacher ends up getting $5,500. Am I correct about that, or what?
That's correct, except we have, obviously other supports in the bill to bring all those teachers from uncertified to certified quickly. And so those pathways and those additional dollars to help them all gain certification, I think that will level out also very quickly with how the pay scale works.
And so when we look at the issue of by 2030, we're saying that teachers have to be certified,
That's right.
but that doesn't apply to charter schools, or does it?
Well, Senator Menendez has made very good points. You've made very good points.
Okay,
That,
all right.
that traditional public schools are by and large, over 99% of the funding of this $8 billion for a reason, but we also have differences in the requirements on charter schools and publics. For instance, I mentioned the 3 Fs for a charter and you close permanently. That's not a requirement on publics. We're not applying that to publics. There is a set of differences in parity between both that we need to continue to be looking at as a committee
Well-
to try to align every way we can.
Right.
Yeah.
Is the sermon over?
Almost.
Okay.
I think we're having a great conversation.
I think we are too.
Yeah.
But I want to stick here for a moment. I like this hymn. Okay. But let's talk about it from a policy standpoint, and I've heard you articulate this, and also many persons on the committee. We say that having a certified teacher is one of the keys to making certain we have success with students from a policy standpoint.
That's right.
So from a vantage point, we've said that we want to make certain students have certified teachers in the classroom.
That's right.
But we don't apply that to charter schools, okay? And in this particular bill, we basically say by 2030, traditional public schools can no longer have waivers as relates to charter teachers being certified. But we don't apply that to charter schools, yet and still the policy behind certification is to put the best teachers in the classroom. And I'm just trying to understand why that is. Can you explain that?
Well, it's very consistent with my last 3 answers and my answers to Senator Menendez that there are differences, obviously, outside of this bill in how the laws that you and I have passed affect traditional public schools and charter schools, and there are differences. I acknowledge that. The public acknowledges that. The legislature acknowledges it. Obviously, we have work to do to continue to consider parity and alignment every way we can.
Okay.
You and I both know that traditional public schools, by far and away, have a tremendous difference and higher number of uncertified teachers. 56% of the teachers hired for our traditional public schools just in the last year, 56% are uncertified. So we're focusing on that.
That's not only in that 56% across the board, man, not just in traditional public schools, that's across the board.
I'm not sure that applies exactly to 56% to our charters, but we know that by and large, our 370,000 teachers out there, most of them are in our traditional public schools. But where I'm going with that is we need alignment to make sure certification is accomplished for both.
And I concur, and I won't keep moving down this line, but I would ask that you consider then, if we're going to do that, and that's going to be a part of our, hopefully be a part of our charge during the interim, that we relax this 2030 provision as it relates to traditional public schools until we can make sure we get this aligned. I agree with you. You've done a great job as it relates to this old bill, but we need to make certain that we do have parity. And you've got to remember, when we started this experiment with charter schools wanted to be left alone. They didn't want government involvement. You remember that? Now they want a bunch of government involvement. It's got some inconsistency in policy as it relates to the founding of these charters and what they want now. And let me move on to the next one. We're looking at, I read somewhere in the volumes of papers I've been reading that either this particular bill or the House bill removed the $60 million cap as it relates to facilities support for charter schools. Was it this bill or the House bill? Do you recall?
This bill does that, yes.
So we removed the $60 million cap and do it based on the ADA.
Yes, and we've made a formula-weighted change.
And the policy reason behind that is?
It's just the same conversations we have about traditional public schools on the pressures of inflation and the increase in cost and insurance and everything else. That, of course, there is no pressure relief for the state of Texas when we have inflation. Our dollars are not adjusted in any way. It's hard for us to adjust our costs for what we have on inflationary pressures. It's certainly hard for the state, without an adjustment for the state dollars, to level up the cost of school districts on the cost of inflation. I think the important thing on that is all of those pressures, we have to consider how we're voting and economic policies that lead us to inflation. When, as a state, we're taking care of all of our political subdivisions like schools, cities, and counties. So
That's a good transition to inflation. That's a good transition to inflation. And I agree with you. Since 2019, I think inflation has gone up maybe about 27, 28%. As it relates to the $8 billion that we're putting into this particular in our school system, what does that represent, if you know, off the top of your head, as it relates to dealing with the issue of inflation? Does it help the school districts? Let me back up. That was a clumsy question. Senator Menendez indicated, and I think all of us occurred, that we have a lot of school districts that are closing schools, and they're having to let teachers go and other professionals. You concur with that, right?
I'd like to know a number on exactly what is not just schools that are closing and layoffs, but I'd like this interim to really do a deep dive into that on impact so that we can make decisions off of it. But yes, I agree with you that that's happening.
And many of the school districts are saying that it's because of deficit budgets they've had to pass, and also inflationary pressures, as we're talking about right here. And so my question to you, as the architect of this particular bill, how does this bill help school districts deal with the inflationary pressures?
Well, the quick answer is the best way we possibly can, right? I mean, we had another surplus in the $20+ billion range, and we're showing through this new money alone with $54 billion of water projects in the queue that are unfunded and urgent. We still negotiated, just with that example, a very, very large percentage of our surplus to go to our public schools and our teachers. So we're doing the best that we can on that. Look, with the ESSER tranches from the federal government for COVID, with the SHARS adjustments on the Medicaid formulas, with inflation, with just higher costs in general across the board for our schools, for our families, for our businesses, the pressures on the state of Texas and the country have been incredible. So where does this land as far as offsetting those pressures? I would go back to the fact that across an average biennium of new money for public schools, we're normally at $2 billion of new money on that average. The total amount of money we're putting into public schools this biennium will be close to $100 billion. Across 5.4 million public school students, that's an average of $17,777 a student. We're at a 4X factor on new dollars for public schools with all of these other pressures that we have on Texas from these other big issues, big infrastructure, managing our debt, Medicaid that we have cost on a credit card for enrollment growth, the border concerns, the grid, and making sure electricity flows to our schools. and that the lights are on the toughest of days. All of these big costs, we still fought for and garnered a huge percentage of this surplus to make sure that we can set a new tone, culture, and commitment to our schools and our teachers unprecedented.
Okay, as a,
Senators, I don't want to interrupt, but
Yeah, I know.
if
You're
we could
right.
just, I would like to get up. If you're finished, we can
no,
go as long as you want.
I'm not finished, but.
But I would
know
like to
that
get
we-
up the invited testimony
But
just
let's make
before
sure
we
let's
break.
make sure we do that. So I'm gonna yield right now so we can get invited testimony.
Well, thank you. I didn't want to rush there. It's a great conversation.
Thank
and I was
you,
going to ask
Senator
Carmen,
West.
would you mind texting somebody to see? I noticed some people fanning themselves back there. Maybe they could get a little more air conditioning going for everyone.
They'd be
And
down,
you're
that's-
welcome. So
Thank you for that, Mr.
and
Chairman.
also, I wanted to mention before we call up the invited testimony, there's a lot of absent chairs up here. Please do not think that that's any type of reflection on the members, the senators' interest in this bill. We have other committees meeting. It's a very rushed time in the legislature as we start wrapping up this session. In fact, I was in 2 committees before I came here myself this morning. So everyone has staff here. Everybody's trying to keep up with it, and we'll be doing the best we can. But don't take their empty chair as being any reflection on the lack of interest. With that, we have 2 invited witnesses, Dr. Imelda De La Rosa and Val Acre. If you would want to come up, please. Welcome. And just grab a seat. Anyone, chair is fine. Whenever you testify, please pull the microphone as close to you as you can. And if you can, let's limit your testimony to 4 minutes. We'll take questions after both of you have already testified. And when you begin your testimony, sorry for all the instructions, but when you begin your testimony, please state your name, who you represent, if other than yourself, and whether you're testifying on, for, or against the bill. And who would like to go first? Ma'am?
Ladies first.
Doctor?
Doctor first.
Doctors first.
Hello. All right. I am Imelda La Rosa, and I am testifying for HB2.
And that'll move a little closer to you so you don't have to lean over
Yes.
so far. There you go.
Okay. Good morning, Chairman Creighton, Vice Chairwoman Campbell, and honorable members of the committee. My name is Dr. Imelda La Rosa, and I'm honored to be here to testify for HB2 and to share my experience as an exemplary designated teacher via the Teacher Incentive Allotment, TIA, as well as a mentor teacher in my district. When I was told I was invited to give testimony, I immediately reserved a round trip via Greyhound bus to be here because it is an extremely important issue I will strongly advocate for. This is my 22nd year as an educator, and I currently serve as an 8th grade science teacher at Salvador Garcia Middle School, a rural campus that has excellent retention rates and serves 375 students, 98% of whom are economically disadvantaged. Close to 1/4 of the students are in the special education program, and a whopping 75% are English learners. As mentioned previously, my campus has excellent retention rates. Teacher experience ranges from 0 to 5 years in the field, accounting for 35% of the faculty, while roughly 65% have 6 or more years of teaching experience. Needless to say, teachers who come to work at Salvador Garcia come to stay long-term. Educators play a crucial role in all communities, but especially in rural ones. Teachers in these areas are hard to come by because of limited funding, which can lead to lower salaries, resource shortages, and limited staff capacity. But we are the heartbeat of the town, quietly, steadily sustaining the life of the community by nurturing its future one student at a time. Some communities like mine have been forced to hire uncertified teachers and or see campuses experience low teacher retention rates. 2 important aspects of this legislation would help with these situations. First, expanding funding and access to the teacher incentive allotment can be the solution to both of these problems. TIA doesn't just reward teachers for their academic performance, it also encourages teachers to have leadership and continued growth as a professional. Second, access to effective mentorship allows new and prospective teachers a support through the process of certification. I have been a mentor to beginning teachers for close to 15 years, and the expertise and experiences I strive to share with them have made an immeasurable impact on their professional growth, which has resulted in positive student outcomes. The teachers I have mentored through various programs have been able to become certified in a timely manner, proving that having quality mentoring programs is vital to the preparation and retention of novice teachers. I'm grateful to members of this committee for including targeted investments that support the recruitment and retention of teachers, such as TIA and funding for quality mentorship in the committee substitute. In closing, I urge you to pass HB2 and view targeted investments in teacher pay and teacher quality, not as expenses, but as essential commitments to our students' futures. When we support teachers, we're investing directly in student achievement. Competitive salaries, as well as targeted raises at crucial steps in a teacher's journey, help attract and retain dedicated educators, while sustained support for professional growth ensures we're continually improving our teaching practice. Our students deserve nothing less than great teaching, and great teaching requires a great investment. Thank you again for recognizing that the success of every child in every classroom begins with a well-supported and prepared teacher.
Thank you, Doctor. Sir?
My name is Val Acree, and I am here for myself and speaking in support of this bill. Good morning, Chairman Creighton, Vice Chairwoman Campbell, and members of the committee. My name is Val Acree, and I'm here to testify for House Bill 2. I teach Honors World History, Regular and Honors U.S. History, and Dual Credit U.S. History through Victoria College at Yorktown High School, a small rural school of 155 students just south of San Antonio. In 2023, I was the Region 3 Secondary Teacher of the Year. I'm completing my 28th year of teaching after spending 10 years on active duty in the Army. I also have a Teacher Incentive Allotment Exemplary designation. Thank you for your work on this bill and your continued investment in the teacher workforce. I'm here today to speak on the TIA and its positive impact, particularly in rural schools like mine. Small districts struggle to compete with larger schools on salary, but TIA helps level the playing field. As a member of our district's TIA committee, we pursued this program to attract and retain high-quality teachers because our students are always the priority. Since implementing TIA, Yorktown ISD has designated 20 teachers, 7 of them at the high school, including myself. We have seen real results. Before TIA, we had teacher shortages across all our subjects. Our English students were being taught over Zoom. But after TIA, we recruited a highly qualified English teacher who moved to Yorktown specifically because of the TIA program. Her impact has been transformative. We've also hired a strong 8th grade U.S. history teacher because of TIA, and that position is very critical in our community. The proposed expansion of TIA from 30% to 50% eligible teachers will allow even more of our staff to benefit, further improving recruitment and instruction. I also strongly support the addition of the acknowledged designation. These changes give more teachers a pathway to recognition and reward. Lastly, this expansion would allow for TIA to reach beyond tested subject matters in many districts. Our district is currently expanding TIA to include CTE programs. This serves as a constant motivation for teachers to continue to develop curriculum and activities that target student achievement and growth. For example, our culinary arts teacher, motivated by the potential of TIA, recently took her students to Samuel Clemens High School, a 6A school in Schertz, to collaborate with their culinary program, a powerful learning experience for our kids. In closing, I would like to reiterate my support for this bill. If TIA continues to grow, it will empower rural schools to recruit excellent teachers, ensuring our students receive an education that parallels larger districts with more resources and capacity. Every student, regardless of zip code, deserves access to high-quality instruction, and this investment brings us one step closer to that goal. Thank you for your time and commitment to our schools.
Thank you, members. Any questions? Senator Creighton.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to mention, thank you both for your testimony and always being available to weigh in on the different and various bills that we have in the committee. I also wanted to mention for our special education teachers in our districts, we have new grants being established this session that will allow them to also benefit from the teacher incentive allotment additional compensation. So we're very excited about that. They need to be included always at the table, and we need to have metrics in place where they benefit. So thank you for mentioning also the additional pathways to help more and more teachers become eligible, because some assume that we have created a bar that's so high that most of our teachers can't attain these supports and these additional monies. And it's definitely very attainable. For our districts that did not have the ability to scale and feel like they just couldn't set this up adequately with the personnel that they have, we put some dollars in and supports for TEA to help with those districts to establish the program. So it's been 4 or 5 years now. We hope more and more districts find the benefits of this. But again, that's why we have the largest percentage of our dollars for teacher compensation going to most all of our teachers. But your validity of TIA and how it's benefited and improved morale is well taken. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Senator West.
I want to make certain that you know, first of all, thank you very much for your testimony. And you're right. Every child, regardless of their zip code, should be able to get a quality education in the state of Texas, period, end of conversation. Yes, one of the highlights in this particular bill in terms of teacher preparation is grow your own.
Yes.
Okay. And so that gives districts the ability to get technical assistance from TEA to develop those programs to kind of grow your own. And once you grow them, they'll be able to get the bonuses and also the performance incentives also. And they live right there in the community. So it's that portion of the bill. Just want to make sure everybody's treated the same.
Yes, sir.
That's what it comes down to.
Well, thank you, panel. We'll go ahead and open up for public testimony now. Thank you very much. I'm going to call the first panel and then pass the gavel back to Vice Chair Campbell. Dash Koska, Philip Morgan, Joshua Jones, and Rich Sena. And again, as you come up, please remember you'll have 2 minutes to testify. We'll hold our questions till the end of the panel. When you see that little yellow light come on, you're about halfway through. When you see the red light come on, please end your testimony. Please wrap it up. And as you begin to testify, please state your name, who you represent, if someone other than yourself, and whether you're testifying on, for, or against the bill. And why don't we start at my right and your left, if that's all right?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I'm Dr. Josh Jones. I'm testifying on my own behalf in favor of the bill. My name is Dr. Josh Jones, and I currently serve as the Director of Educator Preparation at Tarleton State University. My goal as the Director of Educator Preparation is to prepare as many high-quality individuals as possible for a lifelong career in education. Research conducted by Texas Tech's Dr. Jacob Kirksey in Texas Classrooms shows that educators prepared through a year-long residency program become teachers whose students experience more growth than students of those educated through other pathways. Research published in 2024 in other Texas Classrooms showed that first-year candidates prepared through residency programs in Texas perform comparably to teachers with 5 years of classroom experience. Additionally, this study found that if all first-year teachers in Texas have the same retention rates as those candidates prepared through the year-long residency model, Texas would have needed 3,600 fewer new teachers in 23-24, saving Texas school districts between $40 and $80 million in costs associated with hiring new educators. These facts found in the state of Texas within the last 2 years demonstrate that year-long residency model of educator preparation is a valid, valuable pathway to produce new educators. The big difference is the level of preparation. Whereas students who go through a traditional clinical program spend 14 weeks in the classroom, participants in a year-long residency are there for the entirety of the school year from the first day to the last. They participate in professional learning communities, professional development, and are assigned duties. They're placed with mentor teachers, master teachers who coach, support, and encourage them. This preparation does come with a cost. It's difficult to spend all day in a classroom and then go to a job to provide for their basic needs. The funding found in this bill provides monies for teacher residencies that helps these candidates focus on learning how to become the high-quality Texas educators that schools and students need. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Dr. Philip Morgan, Royce City, Texas, testifying on the bill on behalf of my family and myself. Tell you a quick story. Almost 26 years ago, I was standing in the rotunda as a state qualifier at the UIL academic contest. It was really awesome because I did what all the kids do and want to go see what's up in the rotunda. So I get on the elevator, and all of a sudden we're surrounded by a number of Capitol Police, and I start to panic. And then I realize it's because then Governor George W. Bush has gotten on the elevator with me. And he pats me on the arm and he says, Philip, well, he didn't know my name, but he said, young man, what are you doing here? And I told him I'd qualify for the state meet. And that's important because he spent about 25 seconds on that elevator talking about how much he wished the best for me and how they wanted to support me as a student in Texas. And that's why I'm here testifying today. It's been 26 years since that moment on the elevator here at the Rotunda, and I've spent the last 20 as a public fine arts education teacher and administrator, leading and supporting students and funding for those extracurricular activities and programs that really make them who they are. And I got 2 fast points for you today. One, I would ask that this body trust local independent school districts and go back to do hard work on this bill and restore the $9.1 billion in funding that the House proposed and sent over, and increase it to the basic allotment for teachers in the areas where it needs to go. We just got a copy of the bill this morning, and as every good teacher knows, we had to examine it, and the funding for fine arts programs in this bill has been removed. Why? I don't see a great deal of reasoning here. Please put it back in. It is critical to get us up to speed for thousands of Texas students in fine arts programs that often, that's why they come to school. And 2, when you restore that funding, do it without state level strings. We hear a lot about we need to be a small government, and yet I see a lot of the bodies talking about things that will that put a lot of restrictions on the local independent school districts. Let those local ISDs make those decisions. The governor himself promised on record that we would fully fund both ESA program and public schools in this session. This substitute does not fulfill this promise. Please do work and help us. A promise made should be a promise kept to Texas public school students.
Thank you. Rich Sena.
Good morning, Senators. My name is Rich Sena, and I have served as a Bernie Independent School District trustee for the past 11 years. Tip O'Neill, who served as Speaker of the U.S. House, once stated that all politics is local. My testimony today expands on this point. Despite a significant infusion of new money for public education, the House version of HB 2 contained wide disparities in teacher pay and additional funding per pupil for districts. Our district would have received a small fraction of the average statewide increase per pupil, which is ironic in that we're already the 9th lowest funded per pupil district in Texas. We love the Senate's version of HB 2 that increases teacher pay across our state by taking this important step in largely eliminating the pay gap between Texas teachers and the national average. You are helping all districts. As teacher compensation amounts to between 50 and 55% of district budgets, this shows the legislature's commitment to securing a strong future for Texas public ed. We also like that the Senate matched the amount of new money that the House allocated, providing significant funding for special ed, teacher preparation, career and technical ed, and early learning. Yet the small increase in the basic allotment will provide only limited help in dealing with increased inflationary costs for insurance, utilities, and transportation. However, we realize there are only so many public dollars to go around, and that HB 2 funds very important public ed priorities. The only concern we have is that in the House version, some districts were disproportionately impacted by the reduction in hold harmless provisions. We were one of those districts, losing almost 50% of the gain the new funding formulas would have generated. We ask that you resolve any such discrepancy before adopting this bill, and thank you for your consideration. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Members will hold questions until after all the witnesses have testified. Go ahead.
All right, good afternoon, committee members. My name is Dash Koska, and I'm a music education student at the University of Texas. This morning I actually registered for the bill, but that was before I found out how differently this committee sub-departs from HB 2, so I'd ask the clerk to change my stance to being on the bill. For the last 2 sessions, public school funding has been held hostage by Governor Abbott because he wanted to pass his voucher bill. But time and time again, Republican state leaders promised that they would gladly fund public schools if they got their vouchers. In order to just keep up with 2019 levels of the basic allotment with inflation, we would need $1,100 more funding for the basic allotment. 2 numbers, $1 billion and $279 million. That first number is how much this legislature gave for vouchers. $279 million is how much $55 per student is worth. Mr. Chairman, I understand that there's more in this bill than the basic allotment, and I support teacher pay increases because we incentivize well-educated teachers, well-qualified teachers to actually take jobs, and better teachers mean better outcomes. But I also share my friend's concerns over here about fine arts funding. I plan to be a band director as a career, and participation in middle school and high school band programs teaches our young people valuable life lessons about hard work and being part of a team that stays with them for a lifetime. Today, our young adults are struggling with loneliness, depression, and feeling detached from society, and band programs and other extracurriculars offer young people a social glue. Parents are crying out for society to give their kids purpose in life, not more budget cuts to extracurriculars. I think this bill needs more funding for extracurriculars, sir, and I understand that we have differences on it, but I think you should include it. Last thing I would say is don't judge politicians by what they fund when there's a surplus. Judge them by what they cut when there's a deficit. Last time we had a large deficit, this legislature cut $5 billion in public education funding. Right now, you guys are generous because there's a surplus. If the economy goes badly next session, I do not trust you to not cut that funding later. This bill is better than nothing, but we do not trust you. Please do better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, any questions
Yes,
of this
please.
panel? Go ahead.
Madam Chair. Oh, I'm sorry. Was it
Senator King.
Senator King.
Thank you either way. Gentleman in the great suit, gray jacket. What was your name again? I'm sorry.
Dr. Morgan, Philip Morgan.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. Well, it's a great story about George W. Bush. That's exactly the way he was. He would just take personal time with everyone and bumping into him anywhere, and so that doesn't surprise me a bit. I will say this, and I've got a son who is a son-in-law who is a 15-year fine arts teacher, very, very good at what he does. And I certainly wish there was more and more and more funds for fine arts. But at the same time, please understand the extreme difficulty that the chair and others working on this bill have had in trying to come up with a bill that deals, well, my district's probably a perfect example, my Senate district. I have a county is with 4,000 in population and obviously very small school districts. I also have Fort Worth, which the state Texas Education Agency is probably in the process of beginning to take over. That's probably coming. I have large districts like Arlington. I have fast growth. I have no growth. I have losing population. I have everything. And it is so very, very difficult to tailor a bill that meets perfectly the needs of every one of those districts and every one of the campuses within those school districts. And so it's a struggle. Now, I know my son-in-law is already going to be really excited about his raise he's going to be getting. And frankly, if he was in a rural district, he'd get a bigger raise. But that's okay. But I just want to mention, in response to what you're saying, it is extremely difficult to meet all those districts' needs just right in one bill. And then it's also very, very difficult to get, 181 legislators and a lieutenant governor and a governor all on the same page to agree to something, and in addition to work through all the stakeholders. So your comments are very well taken, and I completely take them on the fine arts issue because I hear about it every time I see my son-in-law, or more so my daughter-in-law. And but this bill is as well crafted. I've been in the legislature 27 years, and this bill is better crafted than any education funding plan I have ever seen. And it is a larger advancement forward than any I've ever seen. It's not perfect. You can't draft a perfect one. But as the chairman said, we're all looking forward after a significant break to coming back and working to see what we can do next. And I believe we can do some things next going forward. So thank you for your comments, though.
Thank you, Senator King. Senator Menendez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've been here a little bit less than Senator King, and I have to agree that this is a bill of this magnitude is very hard to put together. But one of the things that both you, Mr. Morgan, and Mr. Koska brought up are something that we have to keep in consideration. We have chosen as a state to pay our schools on average daily attendance, right? So we've chosen to say, you get paid for keeping kids show up to school because we know they learn. I, for one, think we should do it on enrollment, but let's say if we're going to stay with that, I was one of those students that it was the extracurriculars that would get me up and get me in the morning to want to go to school.
Yes, sir.
And also keep me thinking about that test or that essay or that thing that I had to keep the grades up in order to keep doing the extracurriculars. So if we get rid of the extracurriculars, we may actually do ourselves more harm than good. And not every kid wants to play sports. And a lot of kids, they prefer music and band and the fine arts. And so we we can do better. And so, Mr. Koska, I wanted to applaud you on your testimony. I thought it was very, and I have a sister-in-law who got a fine music degree at UT, and then she went on to get 2 or 3 other degrees, and now she's got a PhD from Harvard in architecture. So you can start in some place, and it doesn't mean that's where you're going to end. And so I just want to applaud you for, and the good news is this bill is not finished. Well, the process is still working. And I also want to, the chairman's done it's been a tough job, but the good news is he's still listening, and it's still open, and we still have to come to agreement with the House. And so there's still a lot of moving parts. We're close, but I agree that we need to figure out a way to take care of the fine arts. Go ahead, Mr. Costa.
Yeah, I was going to mention, Mr. Menendez, one of the things that I think Republicans and Democrats really agree on is the crisis that young people are in recently. We know that suicide rates are up among young people, depression is up, and from somebody like me who went through 4 years of high school band and was a leader in there, I met a lot of people who told me, and I teach high school band as a summer instructor, and I see a lot of kids who say, this is the thing that gets me up and to go to school, and I feel a sense of community. Personally, I think, just 8 classes of math and English and science, it's really good to, learn those things, but a lot of times that's not enough for kids to have. We talk about having community among young people. Those programs are exactly what builds that community. If we want to solve the crisis of identity, and obviously, Republicans and Democrats on this committee have a different perspective on why are kids suffering from this depression. Maybe it's social media, maybe it's, whatever it is. This is part of the solution. I think everybody on this committee can agree. Having kids in extracurriculars is a societal good, and so I hope that this bill, when it goes through committee, can at least consider that.
I think your work with the high school students has helped you find a great perspective. We have 3 kids, 25, 23, and 18, and every one of them knows someone who's either committed suicide or has tried. Mm-hmm. And so you're spot on, and we have to do better to make kids understand, because isolation is the number one issue that creates depression in children and adults.
Senator Menendez.
Thank you, Senator Menendez.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions of this panel? If not, thank you very much. The chair calls up, we have the floor session starting at 11 o'clock, but we will call up one more witness, Greg Poole, Dr. Greg Poole. You're here, would you please come up? And then our plan will be to recess subject to the call of the chair following this testimony, and that'll be announced on the floor. But we appreciate everybody staying. Registration will also close at 1 o'clock, as Chairman King said. Go ahead, Mr. Poole. Dr. Poole.
Thank you. My name is Greg Poole. I'm the superintendent at Barbers Hill. I am in favor of the bill. And quickly on safety, it's about getting kids plugged in. We have an initiative. Those things are never done by kids that are plugged in. They're kids that are on the peripheral. And so that is absolutely accurate, and we are proud we have 100% of our middle school kids plugged in. But to the bill, I'm here with an ask. Please consider giving districts more say that have done things the right way. We pay the highest salaries in the state, by far. We have an $80,000 average for our teachers. We don't do the initiative or the incentivized money because philosophically we have found teachers getting the same pay raise is good for unity. So it's just a philosophical thing. But I heard Senator Creighton comment that if it's just put in the basic allotment, it won't be addressed. And I think that's most of the time accurate. Not where we're at. We've given 4 to 5% raises for 20 years. Our teachers will get $18,000 more in retirement compared to any other Region 4 school district. Now, we have 30% low economic. It's not as if we're Highland Park or Carroll or some of the ones that we're compared to. One side note, we pay a $3.5 million penalty because we pay these salaries, because I'm guessing the state only pays the peripheral, the Medicaid, the extra stuff up to the state base. The $55 just about covers that extra amount. So I would ask you to consider that, because the pay raise is not all of the pay raise. And so do consider that. But the request is simple. Our school district has exceptional results. We had all A's. We didn't sue not to have A's. We have not had a non-certified teacher in 20 years. We have not had one. We passed our bond issues by 88%. It's solid Republican, but yet they support our local school district. And that will conclude. Please consider giving more say to the school districts that have done it the right way.
Madam Chair, real quick, but don't leave, Doctor.
Yes, sir.
Am I
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Doctor, what you're referring to is that penalty is the TRS. You have to pay the TRS component. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, by penalty, I mean that if we're going to pay a higher salary, we only get compensated by the state for any of the extra at the state base.
Right. So you need that. Then when the salary goes up, you still have to pay the TRS component of it?
In Medicaid and other things, $3.5 million. Yeah. We pay $3.5 million extra on top of our salaries a year because of that peripheral.
It'd be easier if you said it per teacher what the cost is, because when you say $3.5 million, I don't know how many teachers.
Yeah, that's a good point. We have 500 teachers.
Okay, because some of our school districts are going to have a whole lot more. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you. Senator Creighton.
Yes, Dr. Poole, thank you for being here
Absolutely.
with us. One of the most respected superintendents in the state among many, many, that are just incredible across our 1,200 school districts. What metric, help the committee, what metric would you recommend or advise us to consider with a waiver like you're asking on a quote-unquote top performing or top paying district? Help us with that as we're working on this bill.
I will, and I share the same sentiments. I taught Sunday school for Brandon's brother a long time ago, so we go way back.
My first name is Brandon, to everyone here that knows that.
The senator.
No.
Senator, my apologies.
It's Brandon. It's fine.
So if you did the top 1% of pay, it would be 12 districts. I think it's just a matter of the fiscal note. There's not as much fiscal. Really, there's not a fiscal note in the sense that we're just asking. We're going to give raises. There's two things for us: the percentage of some teachers getting more. If we have to do what has been suggested, we're going to pull money out of our own pocket and make sure every non-professional and every teacher of every experience gets the same percent. That's just the way we believe it should be. But to answer your question, something above a certain amount. We're $80,000. Now, I will tell you, the incentive money, we probably are giving up $500,000 a year because we don't do the incentive. And I did notice there are districts that we've always been the highest that are getting up there. And you heard those two folks testify in favor of it. So that's also causing salaries to increase. Perhaps, Senator, a certain average salary. Ours is at $80,000. And we do have teachers making six figures.
And so to clarify, at that $80,000 pay scale, you're asking for more flexibility and not necessarily our pay provisions in this teacher pay raise that's permanent within the allotment. You're asking just to receive the equivalent dollars and to be able to deploy them as you see fit, or not to receive those dollars.
No,
you've got it covered.
You said it right, to do as we see fit. We strongly believe during COVID, we had school, period. We even had an election during COVID. And our pre-COVID, post-COVID results are 5 times the state average in reading and math. And we think it's because of this philosophy. Bus drivers, if any of those entities hadn't cooperated, we wouldn't have had school. But we did, and we had never below 80%. So to answer your question, yes, if we could have the ability to go across the board, we're given the raise. We certainly thank you for the money. It is to be absolutely commended. My parents were teachers that made state base, so I have no problem supporting this bill. And I do absolutely commend you, Senator, and because where else should the money go? It should go to teachers. And so that is the answer, long answer to a short question.
Madam Chair, one other. What about?
Thank you, Senator Creighton. Now, Senator West.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What about the other employees? Do you?
Oh no, we do them all. We have never, since I've been there, given a different percentage, me included. We do it the same for everybody. It's been 4 to 5% for 20 years, and we feel strongly on that. I don't the sense that I have heard on the incentive pay that there's a bottom 10% that every district has. Maybe they do. We don't. We have tremendous morale.
How many students do you have?
8,000.
8,000. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator West. Members, any other questions, comments? Thank you, Dr. Poole. The Committee on Education K through 16, is that our number? Sorry. Will stand in recess, subject to the call of the chair. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am, it's 16 still.
I can't find.